Good morning. I hope you're doing well and that you're ready to jump into working on your drafts and your rough drafts and transitioning from your outline to your drafts today. We're going to look at how your outline is prepared ahead of time so that your rough draft can save you time and effort, and then also some things to look out for when you edit your draft so that your rough draft is as good as possible before you work on your final draft. Let's get started. Okay guys, so we want to cover two different papers today, and we're going to look at several different things that we should really try to make sure we get spot on when you're editing your rough drafts and when you're transitioning from writing your outline to writing your rough drafts. So we're going to talk about how to take a good outline that you already have and move into a good draft, and then how to edit that rough draft. So the first two things that I want to look at when you're writing your papers is the MLA format for when you include an outline, and the second thing is when you edit your rough draft and you're trying to make sure that it's cohesive, that it's concise, and that it has good grammar. So as far as grammar, we're mostly going to focus on comma splices, since that's maybe the most common mistake that I see in my classes. First of all, let's get this outline and thesis ready to go. Thesis should go here and make it nice hanging indentation, and then the outline. In this thesis, there are 3 points: individual freedoms, gives the government absolute power, and inhibits innovation. So let's put those down below. So now that we've got our outline below, obviously an outline should have 2 main points for each. It should have 2 subpoints for each main point. I'm not going to take the time to try to figure out what each subpoint was in this student's paper. However, you should make sure that your outline includes an A to B for each main point. You can see here that the main points are listed below in an outline format based on the thesis. Remember, the thesis should predict the outline, and the outline should help organize the logical flow of your rough draft, and that transition is what we're going to get to today. So now that we've got a good thesis and outline set up here, you'll notice there's still room at the bottom of this first page for the paper to start, but we don't want that. So create a page break and let your essay start on the second page. If your outline is extra long and goes on to the next page, then your paper should start on the third page. So make sure that there's a page break between your outline and your essay. Okay, so now that we've got the format set up, we've got the header with the last name, we've got our thesis and the outline based on the thesis. This is going to give us a roadmap for the reader as they read your essay. So it's going to help make sure that they know where you're at in the logical flow and basing arguments off of previously made arguments. That's really super important. So make sure that you have a clear outline that's nice and short. Also, just as a reminder, your outline should have complete sentences. So collectivism strips individual freedoms. It would have been bad if the first point was individual freedoms. That's not what we want. So, okay, now when we get into editing the essay, we're trying to make it concise, so an economy of words, that you don't waste words and you use the best words. It's cohesive, which is what the outline is for. Cohesive means that it flows together and it connects all the parts, and it doesn't waste space in between, so no fluff, things like that. So we're looking for the essay to be concise, an economy of words, cohesive, that it logically flows and connects together as you go throughout, and grammar. We need to have good grammar, so especially comma splices, spelling, things like that. I really would suggest you get Grammarly simply because it's free and it helps knock out a lot of those easy mistakes. But just if you have Grammarly, you still need to go back and edit your paper. That's why it's a rough draft. So let's look at what might need to change in order to make this essay more concise, more cohesive, and with better grammar. When we're trying to edit your essay to be concise, what you want to do is edit your essay down from too many words to the word limit, rather than trying to come up with fluff in order to reach the word minimum. My essays require 400 to 500 words, and that's because I want you to have a lot to say and make it really concise and get it down. So one of the ways that you can eliminate words is to recognize who your audience is. In my class, we're reading Anthem, and so you can take a certain amount of liberties in assuming what your readers will know, in this case, your teacher. your teacher knows that you're reading Anthem. Your teacher knows about Anthem. So there's no reason to say the classic novel Anthem. Just say Anthem, because we already know, we're already in a conversation about the book. So just simply say Anthem was written over 70 years ago. Now, the rest of this 70 years ago, that's important because the student is trying to say that what the author was communicating over 70 years ago is applying today. However, the classic novel isn't really supporting any aspect of that idea, so it's not necessary. So, Anthem was written over 70 years ago, and some say its premise is a reflection of our society today. In what ways? Well, her thesis says collectivism is detrimental to society because it strips individual freedoms, gives the government absolute power, and inhibits innovation. So she has 3 points, which we looked at in the thesis and outline section. And you'll notice that part of being cohesive is that she follows that flow of thought. First, individual freedoms, and that's what this first paragraph is about, the loss of individual freedoms. So let's look at some aspects of this first paragraph. This is a stark contrast to the society in Anthem. The people are required to use plural pronouns like we or us, cannot have personal preferences, and cannot be alone or learn outside of what they've been told. So at this point, this is a run-on sentence. The first thing we should change is this colon. We should just make it a period there. Secondly, there is a list that she creates in this sentence. The people are required to use plural pronouns like we or us, cannot have personal preferences, and cannot be alone or learn outside of what they've been told. So we need to make sure that the grammatical structure is parallel. It's similar from beginning to end. And she actually makes a change from a positive to a negative perspective. The people are required, that's positive, or negative, the people would not be required, that would be negative. The people are required to use plural pronouns like we or us, and then there's a break here. It turns to negative. Cannot have personal preferences, cannot be alone, or learn outside of what they've been told. So there needs to be a conjunction here that changes that idea. So, and cannot. You have two choices then. Creating a comma, which should go inside here, comma, and cannot. You need to have a comma and a conjunction when the rest of the sentence is incomplete, right? There's no subject. Or you could add the subject and take away the comma. And they cannot have personal preferences, and then we don't need to have cannot again. It's already there. It's already made negative, right? They cannot have personal preferences, be alone, or learn outside of what they've been told. And then, of course, if we do have a comma, it should go inside the quote mark. Last thing is you shouldn't have conjunctions. They have been told. Good papers don't need conjunctions. And obviously, it helps you get your word count up, so that's always good. Okay, three things I want to look at with this essay. The first one is the transitioning from an outline to your essay paper. The second one is editing your rough drafts again, and some similar examples and some new things as well. And then the third one is the MLA format. Again, we've looked at what the MLA format looks like for outlines and thesis, and this isn't it. This is actually beginnings of a rough draft in this format, so which is great. You should do exactly what this student did. Have your thesis, have your main points, have your subpoints, and then when you've got your subpoints, start writing your paragraphs. That's a great way to get a good rough draft going because it creates a rough draft that's cohesive. You've got your main points and they flow in the right order. It's just that you're going to need to edit in some transitioning thoughts in between the points, right? That connect those paragraphs. However, that's a great thing to start with. And secondly, these subpoints need to be the first sentence in your outline. So you've got a topic here that is your first main point. Let's look at the other one. Collectivism strips individual freedoms. As we're looking at that first paragraph, this whole paragraph is about individual freedoms being lost because of collectivism. And that's great. Usually what you want to do is have 2 paragraphs for your main point, something like this. When you have your subpoints A and B in your outline, they're best used as first sentences for a paragraph. And that's going to create an obvious mile marker as you work your way through the essay, and it helps keep it cohesive. When you write your outline, writing in a rough draft this way is a great way to get a rough draft, and use your subpoints as starter sentences following your outline, but you shouldn't turn in your outline this way. You need to turn in the simple form of your outline so that you can get a good, quick glimpse of what your essay is going to be about. Okay, we've looked at creating a rough draft in your outline, which is great, but don't turn that in. Turn in the simple form of the outline with just the Roman numeral 1 and the A and the B. And we've also looked at the MLA format and how it should look. As I read this rough draft like this, and I read through the outline, then I read the essay. They actually were two different things. It was almost like writing a second rough draft, and that's a waste of your time. I want you to be able to write your rough draft in this way, and then you use this. So if you do this, you write a rough draft, you write your outline, and then you write your rough draft in paragraph form under the subpoints of your outline. Take those paragraphs that you've begun to write, and copy paste them into an outline, into an essay paper format like this, and then start editing and tweaking it so that it flows together. That's going to save you a lot of time. There's no reason to write two rough drafts unless you're trying to start from scratch because you want to get a new rough draft. That's a good idea. But when you're just trying to get a good rough draft, writing it in paragraph form in your outline is great. Then just take those paragraphs, put them down in the essay, and start tweaking them so they flow together better. That's going to save you time. It's going to make it really cohesive because it follows the outline, and it'll save you a lot of effort in the long run. I hope this was helpful. That's all I'm going to cover today. Sorry it was a little long, and we'll see you next time.